Hi guys, and welcome to another video. In this video we're going to be looking at the second one of our weapon meta build guides, and this is bows. So we're going to start again, as always, we're going to go straight to the elders, so it shows all the skills and passives, and we're going to go through each bow starting with the base ones and working our way up to the artifact ones, giving an idea of what they can be used for, which situations they're good, which situations they're bad. Basically going through anything you need to know about bows. So we're going to start off with the basic Elder's bow in the first one. I got asked to show people in this one. To make a bow it is literally just planks, 32. Someone asked me what it was like for swords as well, so it's something I'm going to start including from now on. But yeah, so we're going to get right into the passives. All of the passives stay the same, again with all of the weapons. The only thing that changes is the E. So I'm just going to go over everything on the Elder bow and then we'll swap to the other ones as and when. Obviously take the numbers with a pinch of salt, just because obviously I am using the Elder bow. It will show a mastery level, an item power level that's quite high, so the numbers might be a little higher than you see on your own screen. So let's get into it. First of all, slow poison. Every normal attack slows creatures by 25% and players by 10% for 3.15 seconds. So this is good, especially if you have an attack speed less than that, which you will just by having a normal attack speed. It's good but not great, and the reason I say that is because it's only 10%, which means you would have to play pretty much perfectly for it to make much of a difference. It's not bad for just passive slow, but anything like actual trying to slow people, you wouldn't be able to peel with this, let's put it that way. So I don't rate it very highly. Move on to the next one. Energetic. Every normal attack you restore 4 energy. Again, with bows you don't typically use that much energy, and I think again this is a waste of time completely. I just don't see it being very useful on a bow, to be honest. Aggressive rush. Every 4 normal attacks with your damage gets increased by 6% for 3 seconds. Played rightly, I think this has some strength to it, especially for like big damage combos. So definitely one that I've had a play around with on another account. It's interesting, but I'm not sure how strong it is. It's only 6% and it's only for 3 seconds, so realistically that's maybe a 1 to 2 casts, but still pretty decent. And every 6 normal attacks you gain an attack speed bonus of 35% for 3 seconds. 6 normal attacks means you'd have to literally stand there and cast. So for the bow and the whispering bow, I think this is probably the strongest, and I'll go into that in a little while. But for the other bows, I don't think this is a very good one. So I don't like many of the passives. I actually tend to use slow poison just as a default. Obviously early on it's only the one you have, but even until basically you get to the later 2, out of energetic and slow poison, I think slow poison offers slightly more, because energetic's just kind of pointless. I think I've never gone with a bow. So let's go over the skills. So first of all, in your Q slot, hit enemies in a cone in front of you for 209 damage. Energy cost 13 and a 3-second cooldown. Really strong ability. It's instant cast and it's quite a large cone. Definitely decent for even single target. Now the reason I say that is because you can actually kite backwards with this. If you're kiting with slow poison, or you've just got other slows, things like frost shot, which we'll go into in a minute, you basically can just kite people around or mobs around and just use the Qs as extra damage on auto attacks, like extra damage, sorry, in between auto attacks. Whereas the next one we'll go into, which is deadly shot, aim at an enemy and deal 432 damage with an energy cost of 19, a cast time of 1.5 seconds, which is the important part here, an 11-meter range. So it says range melee, which is a weird one. It's actually about the same sort of range you can actually hit the targets with. It's a really long range, and obviously it spreads out into a cone, so you can hit everything in that area. Not always ideal if you're trying to pull one mob at a time, but I mean in that case you'd just pull with an auto attack and then start using multi-shot afterwards. But yeah, so when kiting, multi-shot is definitely 100% best. If you're looking to do just DPS, if you're doing a PvE run or something, I think deadly shot's decent. And then we get into my favourite spell on all of the bows in general, Poisoned Arrow. Your arrows poison the enemy, dealing 74 damage directly and 30 damage every second for 6 seconds. So that is 180 damage, if I've done my maths right then, and it stacks up to 3 times. So you're doing close to 600 damage, just like ticking damage over 6 seconds. That's pretty nuts in reality. When you start working these out to the other ones, it does damage a lot quicker than it does damage a lot slower than Deadly Shot, but you don't have to use the cast time. It does a little bit more damage than multi-shot quite quickly. So realistically, it's an in-between one. It's got the same range as Deadly Shot. I think it's a slightly less energy cost. It is, and the cooldown's the same as multi-shot anyway. So I think when it comes to ganking, this is probably the one of choice because it's the single target instant cast option. Again, if you're doing things like Zerg v Zerg or kiting 2 or 3 people at once, potentially multi-shot still has its place. But anyway, moving on to the W's. So the first one is Explosive Arrows. The next 5 auto attacks deal 83 damage to enemies in a 5-meter radius around the target. Energy cost 35, cast time instant, and a 15-second cooldown. This is quite strong, believe it or not, for basically certain bows. Only 2 bows really benefit from this, and that is the bow and the Whispering Bow. I can't see the other ones having much of a benefit from this, and even on them too, it's still a limited scenario. So this is the situation where you can actually sit and not worry about being focused, not worry about having to peel. You can look at a target and go, I'm going to focus that target. I think this is where Explosive Arrows comes in. Obviously it also benefits in the PvE scenarios in terms of like AoE farming, so obviously you can cleave down a couple of mobs at a time. But yeah, in terms of PvP, I think this is only really good for the extra single target it does. It's very rare you're going to hit more than maybe 2 people at a push with this. You then have Frost Shot, which is an amazing spell. It's really, really fun. Leap backwards 9 meters, while at the same time firing a frost arrow at the ground right in front of you, slowing anyone hit by 40% for 15.77 seconds. So obviously that's a really long duration slow. It's not a massive slow, but it's worth it. It's decent. But you also put distance between you because you're using the leap backwards. With the low cooldown as well, this is definitely how you end up kiting players. So you imagine the Poison Arrow and the Frost Shot, you're basically just kiting around doing auto attacks and Poison Arrow. You're using the slow poison and you're using Frost Shot. You basically just can kite all day. 1v1 you're very, very difficult to lock down. You then have Speed Shot, a shot dealing 210 physical damage and increasing your move speed by 33% for 5 seconds. Truthfully, I haven't tested this one, so it seems good in theory. Frost Shot has more instant disengage. Speed Shot has potentially more sustained kiting. Obviously higher damage as well because the Frost Shot doesn't do damage. Also a much lower energy cost. I think there's room to play around with Speed Shot, but it would be more for solo ganking or roaming as opposed to Hellgates. I think in Hellgates, Frost Shot's just too good to reposition yourself. We then have Enchanted Quiver, which is the bow-only weapon. Bow-only skill, sorry. You get 15 enchanted arrows. Every normal attack with an enchanted arrow will increase your normal attack damage by 35% and attack speed by 15%. Stacks up to 6 times, so it's a bit of a weird wording. Basically what happens is it stacks on, I believe it stacks on yourself 6 times. It ends up getting quite quick amount of attack speed and attack damage, and on 6 stacks your arrows will reduce the enemy's resistances by 44. So what you can then start doing is weaving your Q ability, whichever one that is, in between auto attacks to maximise how long you keep the resistances up on the target, as well as getting the most benefit out, most damage benefit out of the Qs with the E. I think there's a lot of skill cap to this, a lot more than people presume. If you're looking just to do quite a lot of damage, you can use the E to start kiting around, wait till you get 6 stacks and then pop the W and pop a lot of damage into one target. There's a potential for that, but I just don't see people running it, and I think that's because it hasn't got the damage in itself, and attack damage, auto attack champions just don't seem, auto attack champions, I'm playing the wrong frigging game here, auto attack players like weapons just don't seem particularly strong right now. You don't see things like the one-hand dagger either, which is also like an auto-attack weapon. It just doesn't seem very, very strong. And no one's really running it. I think they're just better options. So moving on to the Longbow. See, everything else stays the same. We're just going to get straight into the E. Channels a massive volley of arrows onto a ground target. Enemies in this area will repeatedly take 147 damage and get slowed by 20% for 6.31 seconds. The full channel hits 6 times. Energy cost 54, cast time channeled, and a 13 meter range, which is slightly longer than normal, than the normal range, and a 15-second cooldowns. This is only good for one situation, and that is Zerg v Zerg, and there are better bows for it, which we'll go into later. The Longbow is never used. It's not a very strong weapon. It may be used for like solo, like PvE group farming, but you want to get the masteries onto your main weapons. Like, it's not worth swapping to another weapon just to do this, because you want the mastery on your main weapon that you're going to be PvPing with. It doesn't get used. I don't think it's a very strong weapon right now. We then have my favourite bow in the game. Fires a magic arrow, which is the warbow, by the way. Fires a magic arrow which deals 666 magic damage if the enemy is further away, and 492 magic damage if the enemy is in close proximity. So I believe, and don't quote me on it, I believe the difference between the two is 11 meters. If it's outside the normal range that you could cast a Q, then it's in the close proximity. If it's further away than that, it's in the further away distance. So why do I like this ability so much? It's got a fairly high energy cost, it's got a massive, like literally off-screen range, and it's got a 10-second cooldown. The reason I like this so much is with slow poison, frost shot, potentially speed shot as well, either or, and poison arrow later on, you become a solo roaming monster. Like, I've 1v2'd with a warbow basically because they just couldn't lock me down. I kited all day long, and all I had to do was hit my magic arrows, and they were dead eventually. Like, it took maybe 4 magic arrows and a couple of auto attacks, and people were dying. It's really, really extreme, and people still underrate how much this hits for. Very, very strong. It's not underrated, sorry. It is used a lot, but I think it's not used to its potential a lot. I don't see many people roaming around with it, and maybe that's just because you've got things like the quarterstaff at the moment, but this is definitely still a big option right now. So we're going to move into the first tier of artifact, which is Whispering Bow, and it is Undead Arrows, a self buff which increases your auto attack range by 50%. While active, each auto attack also deals an additional 135 magic damage for 8 seconds. So this takes your auto attack ranged from 11 meters to around 16 to 17, which is the longest range in the game, I believe, for an auto attack. It's very strong. It's not quite off screen, but you get there, you get close to it. And the active, while active, each auto attack also deals an additional 135 magic damage for 8 seconds. Pretty decent. I think you could use this in conjunction with the explosive arrows. You could just start pumping a lot of auto attack damage from a massive like distance away. I think this has great synergy with attack speed. You get to 5 stacks, pop this, get your 6th stack for the 35% bonus attack speed, and then pop explosive arrows, and you get a real fast attack speed, kicking out a lot of damage from a massive range. Definitely has synergy. People definitely use it. It's good for all sorts because you basically are a very safe backline of DPS, and you do a lot of DPS with it. Underrated, I think. People don't play it very well. You still have to learn how to start a step and move back. It's not a very simple weapon to play with, as opposed to something like a frost staff, where you could pretty much just, as long as you land a couple of skill shots, you win. You have to be stutter stepping, you have to be kiting, you have to be positioned very well. It is quite a difficult sort of weapon type to play, but definitely this has a lot of power. If you can get your hands on one, it's definitely worth giving a go. And then Wailing Bow. Oh god, the Wailing Bow. So this is the Hell artifact. I've had one artifact drop for me in a month and a bit of playing. Yeah, it's just really hard to get your hands on. It's the Hell artifact, and this is the ability. It fires a demonic arrow that pierces through enemies. Each enemy hit strengthens the arrow, causing it to do more damage to subsequent targets. The first enemy hit takes 711 damage. Obviously this is based on the item power, so this will be slightly lower for the lower weapons. The second enemy hit is 863, third is 1016, fourth is 1168, and that is 4 and above, which means you can hit 20 people with this arrow and it'll hit every single person after the first 3 for 1168. That's ridiculous. And that probably tells you what this weapon's good for as well. The energy cost is ridiculously high. The cooldown's quite high, but I think it'd need to, and it's got a long range to it. The reason why this is so strong and why it's a bit of a weird weapon that you don't see often, obviously it's hard to get hands on, but if you do get them, people are only typically using them in Zerg v Zergs. When you get 20 people and you've just fired like 1,000 damage into every person, yeah, you can decide the fate of a fight with a Wailing Bow. It's very, very strong, but in things like Hellgates where you're hitting maybe 2 people, it just doesn't do the same amount of damage. But still a very strong weapon in the right scenario. So that's everything with the bows. I think bow's in a decent place right now. Typically War Bow is the one you see. Whispering Bow's seeing a little love, but not many people are running it. I think it is also the artifact of it as well. It is not the easiest to get your hands on. And even if you do, people are crafting all of them at like 4 3s or 5 3s at the moment, so they're a difficult thing to get your hands on, but it's definitely worth giving a go. Anyway guys, like, comment, subscribe, all that normal stuff. If there's anything specifically you want me to cover, I have made a couple of changes to my mic volume. Please let me know if this is any better today. Other than that, subscribe, check out my Twitch channel. Other than that, I hope you're having a good day. Catch you later guys.